Welcome. Today we're going to do a restoration video of an old Danish axe head produced by Danish Steel Industries, which shut down back in the late 80s, I believe. This one's seen better days. Someone's been at it with what I presume is an angle grinder or maybe a bench grinder. Has quite a bit of surface rust and a bit of mushrooming, but we'll take care of that. First off, I'm going to hit it with a steel wire wheel on an angle grinder to get rid of all that surface rust. These things are just incredible for removing rust and old paint, old concrete, whatever you might find on an old tool, and keeping the patina on the steel. Some people like to use acids to clean up old steel, but I think it leaves a pretty boring, pale grey finish on the axe head, which I don't like. She cleaned up nicely. I'm just going to address those mushrooms at the back of the pole and give the edge a nice little tune-up. The belt grinder is just an incredible tool for sharpening up steel, especially old axe heads where you have quite a bit of material behind to dissipate the heat. But obviously you don't want to run it too hot and ruin the tempering, so I keep a bucket of water nearby. Got a nice edge on it now, and got rid of the mushrooms. Now I'm going to hit it with the finer belts. I'm going to address the bare steel where the mushrooming was and try and fade it into the patina by bluing it. Unfortunately, I forgot to record it. I'll do a video on that at some other point. With any old axe head, I like to start with grit 120 and then move my way all the way up to grit 1800 and then finish it off with a polishing wheel on my angle grinder, just to get that nice mirror polish and a super sharp edge. I actually started making the handle before cleaning up the head. I did this so I could do the glue up whilst cleaning up the head, just to make things a bit more efficient. This handle is made out of a piece of European ash, as I almost exclusively use for the handles. It has pretty decent grain orientation, and at least half of it doesn't have any run out at all. At the lower third of the handle there's a bit of run out, but I'm not too worried about it. The part of the handle that sees the most stress when used is the upper 1/3, so I think we'll be able to get away with it. But if anything goes wrong and the handle snaps, I always give a full guarantee, so the customer can just send it back to me and I'll redo the whole thing if need be. I'll cut it up on the bandsaw. Got some nice curves to it. Now I'm going to just trace a mark where I feel like the inlay should run to. I'm going to make this a bit longer than I usually do because I'm trying out some new wood. And then I use my trusty little homemade jig to route out the palm swell inlay. The wood I'm going to use today is Cebrano or Sepra wood. I bought a whole stack of it recently. I've never worked with it before, but it looks absolutely incredible once it's oiled up. So here I'm just gluing it up, getting it clamped down nicely, making sure that it's nice and snug with the cutout for the handle, and then leave it to cure. Next day I start off by cutting off the majority of the excess wood. There's no need to create tons of dust in the workshop, so might as well use the bandsaw as much as possible. You can already tell that the grain on the Sobrano is absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to sand it down into a rough shape. I do this at this stage because then it's just nicer working the handle down to fit the head without having the sharp corners, and also give it a little bit of a chamfer on the bottom of the handle, so I have a good surface to whack on when I seat the head without running the risk of snapping off the scales on inlay. I have had that happen before, so I don't want to do that again. It's always a hassle to do up again. But this glue up went just really great. And look at that grain. Isn't it beautiful? I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to turn out great. Now I'm just going to go at it with the spoke shave. It's probably my preferred tool in the workshop. It's not too aggressive and it's quite easy to control. I highly recommend getting a spoke shave if you don't have one already. It's like for any woodworker, really. So I just fitted the head, using a dead blow hammer just to get it started, to put some markings on the handle. I use these as indicators of where I need to remove material. So when you have the markings on the handle, you don't really want to remove material above the mark, but only below. If you move too much material above, you're going to have too much of an air gap at the top of the eye once you have the handle down to shape. Fitting the handle to the head can take quite a bit of time, and usually I take the head on and off probably somewhere between 5 and 10 times to get it perfectly seated. I've cut out a lot of the calming down of the handle, there's not much point of you having to sit through all of that. So I've gone for a wedge of Sobrano as well to match the palm swell. And as you can see, I've marked the wedge. I do this to ensure that I don't drive it into deep. If you drive it into deep, you might split the handle. It's not a big deal if it doesn't bottom out at the end of the kerf made in the handle, but as long as you get it at least halfway down the kerf. If you find that it's going in too easy, you're not putting enough compression inside of the eye. And if that happens, then I'd recommend you start over and make a wedge that has a bit more width to it. I'm doing the final shaping of the palm swell on the belt grinder with a finer grit. Previously I was using a grit 40, I believe, for the rough shaping of the handle. I'm using a grit 80, which is significantly less aggressive, a lot more controllable. The handle wasn't as smooth as I'd like it, so I grabbed my Shinto rasp and used the fine side to just smoothen everything out, so there are no small bumps and divots from using the belt grinder. It's just incredible for evening everything out. And now it's time for a lot of sanding to get all the tool marks out and get a nice smooth finish on the handle. I'm using a 120 grit sandpaper on the orbital sander, and just making sure to get every little bit of the handle sanded down. You could leave it as is, but for my products I like to bring them all the way to grit 500, especially with the nice palm swells and whatnot, to really get them popping and nice and shiny. I always use a sanding sponge. That's grit 500. I find these work really well for sanding the oval shape of the handles. And now for the finishing touch, a bit of Danish oil. And once that's set into the wood and wiped down, I'll add a bit of my beeswax and linseed oil. And here she is, ready to go back to work. Thank you for watching. You can always leave a comment down below if you have any questions or comments. See you in the next one.